This question is clearly testing punctuation, and since we have things like semicolons and periods and colons, it's testing sentence structure as well. Where do sentences begin and end? Can we use these kind of big punctuation marks because we need sentences to do that? Now, you may have heard me at some point in a lesson talk to you about semicolons and periods, and that if we see both of them, we can usually cross both of them out because they mean the same thing. Remember, a semicolon is used to separate two complete sentences. The reason that we can't use that strategy here is that they're in different places, right? So in order to use that strategy of that they're kind of the same, so cross them both out, they need to be identical choices. But here, the period is between high and on in choice A, but in choice B, it's after on, the semicolon. So that's technically not the same. And so we might need more context for the sentence in order to see if either of those works, right? So we can't eliminate them just by sight, but we can still use the fact that both of them require complete sentences to test out whether they're good here. So even without reading everything else, do you think openness to experience is a sentence? There's no verb, there's no subject. It's just like, I guess, a description of something. So I don't even know. Even if we inserted the word on here, on openness to experience, that's not a sentence. So neither of these work because they need sentences on both sides of the punctuation mark, and we don't have one. Probably there's a sentence on the front side, but the back side does not have it. So now the real question is, do we need no punctuation or do we need some? And so we can maybe read this and hear, is there a break somewhere here? Why would we need a punctuation mark? Because there's some sort of attachment. There's some sort of break in the sentence. So let's see what we hear. This is a long sentence. In a 2016 study, Eastern Washington University psychologist Amani El-Alali found that among the study participants who experienced frisson, a physiological response akin to goosebumps or getting the chills while listening to music, there was one personality trait that they scored particularly high on: openness to experience. Now, just based on my reading, I know it gets a little messy in the beginning and middle there because there's a lot of interruptions. But as I got to the end, I kind of regained the rhythm of the sentence, and it sounded to me like we needed a break after on. So if that's all you can kind of figure out here, and that's why you pick D, I'm okay with it. But you should understand why a colon is a really good punctuation mark in this case. In order to use one, we need a sentence beforehand, and then afterwards we have some flexibility. We could have another sentence, we could have one word, we could have a list, we have lots of options. But regardless, that second part is kind of an answer or explanation to something about the first part. So normally I think of it as an answer because I'm like, okay, there's like a question that's asked. It's not a literal question, but the first sentence is kind of phrased in a way that there's a clear question that they want you to ask, and the part after the colon is the answer to that question. So let's see how we can break this down. I'm going to get rid of some of this extra stuff here. Don't care. So this person found that there was one personality trait that they scored particularly high on. What was that personality trait? Openness to experience, right? See how I turned that sentence into a question, and there's an obvious answer. And that is a sentence, right? So this part here, there was one personality trait that they scored particularly high on. That's a sentence. Without all the extra stuff, it sounds like it's missing something, but it's not missing anything grammatical. It's missing meaning. It's missing description and detail. But those are things that can be cut out of sentences. We're not interested in how descriptive the sentence is. We are interested in whether it has a subject and a verb and a period, right? Is it something that could stand on its own as a complete grammatical idea, regardless of how many details we've put into it? So it can. That's a sentence that could have a capital T and a period after the word on. And then, though, since it raises this question, and it's a very easy answer to that question, this is a perfect opportunity to use a colon. Again, there is one personality trait that they scored particularly high on. What was that trait? Openness to experience. Perfect use of the colon. So if you think that colons are for lists, that is a kind of false rule. It is possible that we use colons for lists, but not always. And so here's a case where we don't have a list. We have one thing, a list of one maybe, but we're still using the colon, and that is perfectly acceptable. In fact, that is how the SAT often uses colons, because they know you associate with them with lists, and so they're going to give you colons that don't use lists to see if you really know how to use a colon. And helpfully now, after this lesson, you do.